is part of it. So, hello everybody. Welcome back once again to the Home We've Never Left station. And of course, we have with us today, maybe I'll say a blossoming regular on this segment of things, my good friend Lucy. Again, somebody who has explored very extensively themselves and I think brings a really nice energy to this. So, as we typically do, Lucy and I take the opportunity to do a little chatting before we start these sessions. And I've kind of mentioned, usually when I do one of these, I have a little inkling about the information that's going to be shared. And so I also felt that I should see what's been moving around within Lucy's consciousness lately. And so she shared a little bit of that with us also. And I think once we start, we're going to revisit that because I think that there's a particular approach that I think will be taken if it's offered once we're a little more fully into all this. So I'll shift things a little bit here and we'll be back momentarily with a little more of me than what's going on at the moment. So once again, we would like to offer our greeting to all of you and to express our appreciation for the opportunity for us to interact with your energies in the way that you're inviting us to at this moment. So one of the things that we'd like to share a little bit about in this session is the idea of trusting of the self and an allowance of your day to unfold in a way that maybe we'd say is a little more natural when you begin to involve those deeper layers of yourself in the process. But also in that, in our conversations with Lucy earlier, there were a couple of ideas, a couple of themes that they mentioned. And if you would, Lucy, could you repeat those concepts for us now?
Yes, the first one was, how do we know that we are eternal? We hear people speak of that, and we may want to believe that, but how do we get there? And the second question was about self-worth. How do we bring ourselves, evolve ourselves to a place where we really do feel that we are a fractal of God, that we are worthy of being powerful creators and loved?
And so the ideas that we have with us now, these three ideas, actually dovetail together quite nicely. So most individuals, of course, on your planet have an awareness of this idea of God or Allah or Krishna or Vishnu, the great mystery, whatever term is used in those particular cultures, some idea of some personality, some beingness that exists around, maybe we'll say, the experience that is had here on the planet in what we call physical reality. And when you begin to explore these ideas, there's, of course, information that talks about your part in all of that. How deeply and inseparably, you are expressed as a part of all of that. And of course, as was mentioned, the idea is one thing, and experiencing that idea as a reality is something else. So, anybody who points themselves in this direction is going to then open up a number of things as part of their process. And what they're doing, even though they may not fully understand it, as they do this, is they're beginning to place more trust in themselves, in that expression of themselves, in that part of themselves that maybe they may call the soul, or they may just think in terms of God or all of whatever that expression is, and themselves as a part of that expression. But they've placed trust in that to some degree as they begin to move forward. And that's an important step, because when you do that, what you do is you begin a relationship with those deeper parts of yourself in a way that you hadn't really before. And this allows you to begin to open doors for yourself that otherwise you would walk past as just a wall. And so on your planet, especially in this day and age, there is a wide variety of information that speaks to this type of a theme, to the idea that you are much more than you have considered yourself to be for perhaps a large portion of your life. And this theme, of course, is becoming more prevalent on your planet also. It used to be that there were only certain civilizations that kept these ideas at the forefront of what they were doing, that there were certain pockets of individuals around your planet that explored these ideas and these concepts in very deep ways. Now, of course, there are a large number of you who are doing this, and that number is increasing all the time. And so the information in that regard is much more available to you than what it used to be. And the sources of the information also are different than what they used to be. They are not necessarily only available through particular sources of information. Certain organizations, perhaps, will say, that are available in many, many ways. And so the ability to encounter information that allows you to explore yourself beyond the parameters that were possible, let's say, 4 or 5 decades ago, is much greater than it was at one particular time. So when you first begin this process that involves a new exploration of trust in this previously unknown aspect of yourself, to the degree that you're about to explore it anyway, you begin to have experiences that come into your life. And these experiences may take the shape of a book that shows in your life, maybe videos, maybe friends that you become familiar with, maybe movies that you see. There's all sorts of things that begin to open the doors for you. And this is quite a common exploration for many individuals. And once that part has begun, then there are more personal things that begin to become part of your process. And in this, the information and the interaction that is going on with you really all the time begins to become part of your awareness, usually in little ways. You might get these little, you may call them a thought. You may have a feeling about something. You may have a little piece of what you might call your imagination that shows up. You may have some impression that comes into your life or something. You may have an impulse to do something. And what's going to go on is that it's not so much that these things weren't happening before, It's that they weren't being noticed in the same way as what's going on now. And so this is those deeper layers of you altering the way that you utilize your consciousness a little bit so that now you begin to pay attention to things that you weren't paying attention to before. And now the idea is to act on those things because, of course, what you need to do in this process is to move the information from idea or theoretical, maybe we'll say, into experiential, because it's the experience that's going to help you to move this towards what you can call in this moment a reality. Other than that, it's just concept. It's not something that you trust in the same way. And so as these small doors begin to open for you, take the opportunity to act on them. It can be many, many simple things. It may be something like you're in traffic and you get this little idea in your head or this thought or this feeling that you should change into the other lane. And maybe, especially in the early stages, you don't pay any attention. And then your lane slows way down and you're stuck in traffic. And the lane that you had this little impulse to move into is moving along just fine. And after a while, when things start to clear up and you are once again able to move, you see that there was an accident that occurred maybe 2 blocks, 3 blocks ahead of you that you couldn't see from where you were, but you had this little thing that showed up. So these little impulses that show up with them. And sometimes at the same time, you can get a little bit of information. You can get an impression about what may be occurring. And so these types of things will begin to impress themselves on your consciousness throughout the day more than what they had. But what we're going to suggest is that start to pay attention to those things and begin to act on the information that shows up for you in that regard. You may think that perhaps 2 days before that, you thought, okay, I think I'm going to plan my trip to the grocery store on Friday, right? And here it is Thursday and it's in the morning and all of a sudden you get this feeling like you should go to the store now. And so you go to the store and here at the store you run into somebody that you haven't seen for a long period of time. And maybe even when you're in an aisle, the images of that friend and some of the things you had done in the past start to pop into you and you begin to think about this individual. And as you round a corner into the next aisle, there they are. And you hadn't thought about that individual for maybe a number of months. So you were prompted to take this step that led to something else, right? So things like this will begin to occur again in your life in a way that you'll begin to notice them. Again, it's not that they weren't occurring before, it's that you weren't paying attention to these things. Many times you weren't acting on the prompts you were getting to take some action that would then open the doors to more of these things occurring for you. And so there's all sorts of things that may begin to happen like this. You may have an experience where you had information show up for you that is largely the same as information of this experience that you're familiar with, but a part of it is different. And when you talk to individuals who are also associated with this, they go, yes, no, that's the way that it happened, but it's not what your memory of it was as far as how it happened. And so in that, you're allowing yourself to, again, open up to a flow of reality, a flow of your potential movement through your life that's a little different than it was before. And so in this is involved a certain layer of trust, a certain layer of being aware that the things that are showing up for you can be acted on. Now, one of the other things that many people have a tendency to not pay attention to, as we're talking about these other things, are the ways that many things have happened in their life. Let's say, if you've been working at a particular job right now, if you think back about the process of that becoming your job and all the various components of what that process was. And when you think back about that, you can recognize in doing that there were a number of things that occurred, not because you planned them, but because they were part of your experience, right? Certainly, the interview, the interview that you had with whoever it was when you went to get that job, you had no idea how that person was going to approach the interview. You had no idea the things they were going to say to you. You had no idea the things they were going to ask of you. When you began the job, the people that you met, you didn't know any of those people before that time. Now they're part of your experience. There's so many different things, regardless of what it was that you began, anything that was important in your life that showed up as part of that experience that you, in the typical way of thinking about things, you did not orchestrate. They were a part of the experience, right? That became your experience. And so many times what you will do as you move into an understanding of your life where you know that there's more to why your life is going on the way that it goes on, is that you'll look back and you will remember the parts that you orchestrated about that. And sometimes you'll forget about all the things that you did not, in the traditional way, actually play a part in to bring that about in your life. But many times what you'll attempt to do is you'll attempt to recreate that in the way that you think it came about to have a very similar experience. So here, what we're talking about is we're talking about, again, allowing that trust that you have in yourself to flow into your life and to bring those things into your life that then will move your life in the direction that you want your life to move into. And so these things are very closely woven together. The whole idea of understanding the more of who you are and that becoming a reality is about a flow of activity that's going to begin in your life. And the experiences that are going to be a part of that flow. And so one of the things that you can do is, if you've been associated with certain organizations as you've opened this door to exploring yourself, many times there are ideas about how this path will begin to unfold in front of you. And so even though having a template like that can be helpful, we're going to suggest to hold on to it loosely and to allow things to come into your life in ways that might be surprising to you as far as how they show up in your life. Because in doing that, many times they will connect with parts of you that, if you attempt to orchestrate it along the lines of how you believe it should unfold, that more typically in those times, there won't be the connections that are made to those little places inside of you that stimulate things within you, that bring information to the surface for you, that help you in that movement. And so to allow spontaneity in that process, to allow a trust of yourself in that process, allows the process to unfold in, maybe we could say, in a more organic way, in a way that pulls in aspects of you, things that you already know, experiences that you've had, that builds the process for you, helps make the process more real for you. Now, in this, as part of the association that many individuals on your planet have had over the many centuries, there have been in your history individuals who have come forward who have shared deep truths about the nature of your existence. And then very frequently, as the individuals around them attempt to keep that information alive and to share that information, they move into that with the best interest behind them. But the individual who had the connection, once they move out of the picture, what begins to happen is the more common ideas of your world start to get folded into that experience. And then the ideas of needing that experience to move forward in a way that people think is best for that experience to move forward start to take place, as you do when you create your own experiences for yourself from a particular way of looking at things that you believe it should be created in this way because that's the way it was created before. That's the way it should best work. That's the way it will work the best. So individuals do that historically in civilizations also. So as that information moves forward, it becomes a little tight. It becomes a little constraining. It doesn't allow the freedom many times that the original individual imparted energetically into what they were sharing. And so in that, ideas form about a strictness that needs to be held in place, a particular approach that needs to be had. And also many times there's the idea shared of a hierarchy of, maybe we can say, worth, what you need to be doing to be worthy, how you need to be approaching life to be worthy. The closeness, maybe we'll say, that you need to have to the information to be more worthy. The status that you need to have in society to be more worthy. The way that you express yourself in your civilization or your society to be more worthy. There are many, many things that over the course of time historically have become ideas that you've embraced about the nature of your worth. All of them, of course, we're going to suggest being untrue in that larger way of looking at things. From the perspective of the idea of God, from the perspective of the idea of, maybe we'll say, the great mystery, from the perspective of the idea of any personality or any expression of beingness that is beyond the confines of what you consider your experience is right now. There's an idea that all of what you're experiencing flows from that perspective of existence. And in that, the idea that you are an integral part of that existence. Because if you think in those terms, if you think in the terms of some beginning of existence, however it is that you picture it, however it is that you name that, then all of existence flows from whatever you believe that source of existence is. As a result of that, you have to be part of that flow. It can work out no other way. You must be an integral aspect of that flow of existence. Now, there's a growing number of individuals on your planet in this time period that are familiar with the concept that this experience of yours was an intentional experience. In other words, in all the ways that you as spirit create, this is one of those ways. And in this theme, in this idea, in this particular experience, what you chose to do was you chose to create an experience where you largely forgot what it was that you were. It's almost like explorers that you've had on your planet who maybe started on the east coast of the United States way before there were any trains, way before there was any transportation. And their idea was to head towards the west and explore what was in front of them, having no idea what it was they were going to run into. You do similar things in spirit. You explore ideas and themes within yourself where there's many surprises to be had, shall we say, where you don't really know how things are going to unfold so much, but you know you have the wherewithal to do it. And so you invest yourself in those things, like the individual who maybe gets involved in the Red Cross or something like that and goes to an area that's very challenged. They have no idea exactly what they're going to get into. And maybe things change even before they get there. And they get there and it's a much more challenging experience than what they thought it might be. So they had some idea of a theme they may be getting into, but that theme, of course, changes. It becomes something completely different. So this is the nature of your experience here. But also you understand that you can meet that experience. You have the ability to meet that experience. Now, so you have this juxtaposition about the infinite ability that you actually have, the expression of you that you actually are, and then within the experience yourself, the ideas, the themes, the belief systems that you've layered on top of all of that many times result in you feeling that you have less worth perhaps, than somebody else does, or that your worth hinges upon what it is that you do or how it is that you express yourself. We're going to suggest that none of that, in fact, makes any difference. Perhaps we'll use water as a metaphor for what we're talking about. When you think about your planet right now, there are many, many, many expressions of water. Water is expressed as the ocean. Water is expressed as lakes, as small streams, as rivulets, as puddles. In many, many forms, it's expressed as rain as it falls out of the sky. It's expressed sometimes in a solid form as ice. It takes many shapes and forms. Regardless of how it's expressed, it is in fact, however, water. It is the same thing. So it's similar with you. Regardless of how you express yourself, you are what you are. You are eternal. You are spirit. And even though you have placed yourself in an experience where the theme is one of largely forgetting what you are, if you understand that, which an increasingly large number of individuals are coming to understand, that this is something that you have done intentionally with yourself. If you understand that, and if you understand the variegatedness that existence has, if you look around at you, we can pick any, let's say, type of tree, oak trees. Line up any 1,000 oak trees. None of those oak trees is the same. Walk through the woods and look at only maple trees. None of those maple trees are the same. Sit in a huge field of grass and spend the next week looking at every blade of grass. None of those blades of grass are exactly the same as the other blade of grass was. Creation, your existence is about uniqueness. It is not about being the same. So in that regard, as you bring together your creation, your physical creation, all of you are going to express it in a unique way. Now, sometimes it's similar to what other people do, but it's also very, very unique. It's not about needing to do anything in a particular way to be of value to all that's being created here. Because if you're part of the creation, which you can't help but be because you're here, your value is implicit in that. You are here, adding to everything that's going on. Many times you can drive down the road, you're in your car, you're heading to wherever it is, you're going to the restaurant, you're going to your job, you've done it day after day after day, and the thought may never occur to you of the individuals who actually built that road. You just use the road, right? Or you may turn on the tap to your house to get water or to fill the pot to cook your dinner or whatever it might happen to be. And how all of that came about so you could turn that tap and have water flow into your pot may never occur to you, but it happened, right? Individuals involve themselves in all of that. So all of existence is like that. All the things that are happening around the world and all the forms that people are doing things and all the ways that they're expressing themselves, they're all intimately part of this expression, of this existence. They're all very important in that regard. Can you change your expression if you would like to? Absolutely. You can change your expression if you would like to, especially in these time periods, shall we say. The opportunity to be able to change the theme of what your existence is much, much more open than what it once was. It doesn't mean that there was something wrong or something bad about how you were expressing yourself. That is a theme that's developed here within your experience. And within the experience, as a part of the experience, and now listen carefully to what we're going to say here, it is valid. It's valid as an experience. It doesn't mean it's true in that regard. And there's a distinction to be made there. You can have an experience as if you don't believe that you have value. That's a valid experience. In other words, all experience in creation is a valid experience. But in a larger context, that feeling you may have in that moment, even though it's genuine in the moment, there's more around it. There's a greater depth to understand about you as a being than the experience that you're having then. You can move into that experience. You can have that experience. You can have an experience where you begin to understand that, first of all, your value does not hinge on what it is you're doing, how it is you're expressing yourself. those things are really just choices. You get to choose how you want to express yourself. Now, does it occur that as you begin to express yourself from a place where you value your expression, that your expression feels like it has more value? Yes, you will experience that. But it's not because you have more value that you feel that way. It's because you're approaching your expression in a different way now that you feel that way. Your value has not changed. Your value can't change. Regardless of how you express yourself, your value will always be unquestionable. You will always have value. You can feel different about your expression. That's an entirely different thing. You can recognize your value as you begin to express yourself in various ways. And all of that's true. But it doesn't change the fact that your value is not connected to how you're expressing yourself. Your value is connected to your existence and nothing else, only your existence. And you can't help but exist because here you are in existence. So, wherever you find yourself, if you question what your value may be, typically as a result of experiences you've had when you were very young, but there can be other things as well, but many times its genesis is found there. Understand the challenges that the individuals had around you that prompted them to express themselves in ways that were less than nurturing. And by that, we don't necessarily mean that you have to know what their challenges are, just to understand that nobody expresses themselves in those ways unless they themselves are strongly challenged in some way, usually with the same thing that you're experiencing, a lack of self-worth, that they feel that way about themselves. Otherwise, they cannot express themselves in that way because they would otherwise feel the natural affinity that is there to be felt between all of us. So they have to have felt like that in order to express themselves in ways that were not nurturing. But that doesn't mean anything about you. It doesn't mean that the ideas that you may have about yourself, the way that you may feel about yourself in that regard is actually a fact. It's only something that is an artifact, shall we say, of an experience that you had. Now, not that the experience wasn't had, it was had, but there's an opportunity in this moment then to look beyond the experience, to look into how you can express yourself and to make strides in those directions, to do the things that bring a different feeling state to the existence that you have right now. And of course, you're the one that's going to have to begin to move in that direction. And what's going to start to happen also as you do that is you will begin to have individuals come into your life like we're doing right now. You find yourself here, of course, who suggest a different quality about you, who help you pull out those qualities that are within you to express, not only for yourself, but for everybody else that's around you, because those qualities are there, they are within you. And so you'll begin to pull situations and individuals to yourself as you begin to look for those potentials within yourself. You'll find that those deeper parts of yourself will very much become part of that experience for you. And they'll begin to open doors for you, bring experiences to you that'll help you to move in that direction, to understand that those ideas that you hold within yourself about a worth that's there will in fact be reinforced for you. So we think that this is a good time for us to pause and to go to Lucy, as they've been paying attention to the expression, and to see if there's maybe questions they think individuals may have, or some additions or reframing that they think might be effective in this moment.
Well, I love how you began, which was to focus on the trusting of self and the allowing of the day to unfold, the acting on impulse, the holding lightly beliefs about how things are supposed to go, and letting oneself be surprised. Because all of that is so different from taking a left brain approach of, I have to figure it out. I have to control circumstances. I have to make this happen. It's almost the antithesis of that. This trusting, allowing, including such things as, I want to believe I'm eternal. Simply wanting that and allowing that to unfold, allowing our inner being to create circumstances, whether it's the book that drops in our hands or some other person coming into our experience who helps us take that next step in our understanding. So they're such different frames of reference for going through a day, either the allowing and trusting and being curious and seeing it unfold, and again, following the impulse, or the I've got to figure this out myself. And I just love the way you've presented the two. And I'm curious if you can provide a little bit more information about how people can let go of it's my responsibility to figure this out, to take the next step, and to try to control circumstances.
Right. So what we think would be a good reminder for everybody is the process that you call school. So when you move from one grade into the next grade, you don't really know what's going to happen when you move from third grade into fourth grade into fifth grade. There's a different teacher many times. There's going to be subject matters that are going to be presented to you in a different way. And you're going to then become familiar with all of that information. And then it happens again with the next grade. And then it'll happen again for the next grade. And so you don't even question that process because you have some idea that there's this framework in place called school that you're going to involve yourself in. And as you move through this process, what's going to happen is that you're going to be given information that's going to help you grow in some particular way, for you to become more of who you are. Now, in the early stages, you don't even think of it that way. You don't think of it as you're becoming more of who you are, but that in fact is what's happening. You're becoming more of who you are. And again, you did not configure all of that in the typical way of thinking about things. In other words, you didn't build the schools, you didn't hire the teachers, you didn't form the curricula. It was already in place, right? You just added yourself to that process that was already there. And so in the same way, this process helps also in the same way. So you mentioned something earlier that we want to go back to as well. If what you do is you attempt to, I guess we can call it left brain this process, rational, logical, intellectual approaches to things, what you do is you only have available to you the information that you already know. So then imagine if you moved from sixth grade into seventh, eighth, or ninth grade, but there was no new information that was given to you. It was all the same information. How do you grow when only the same information is being presented to you? So individuals who've taken the opportunity then to explore, and it's so nice that there are many out there now, so individuals can go out and they can explore on the internet and find many people who have done this. So there's examples now, tangible examples. And what happens there is it's like that progression in school where there's new information out there, but you have to allow yourself to approach it without you needing to control it. You have to allow for those things to flow into your life. And as you do that, it's like the process of moving from one grade into the next, where you don't really know what's coming in that next year, how that teacher is going to present the information, all the information that's going to be presented. And even from the time that you move from high school to something like college, very different, a very different feel. Maybe you moved away from home even. You took a larger step in trusting, right? You're no longer in your hometown. You moved perhaps halfway across the country. And you have all these individuals surrounding you who have very different ideas about life, right? What does it do? It allows that potential to flow into your life, right? It allows all those possibilities that were there. If instead what you do is you try to control that, if you try to say, well, I'm only going to go to a place that teaches in this way. I'm only going to go to a place that offers this information in this way. You're going to have a very constrained experience. You're not going to allow your experience to move and expand. So whether you realize it or not, you've involved yourself with a trusting process in many different areas of your life. School being one that you're quite familiar with. So if you think back that I've already done this before, I've allowed myself to become part of a process where I've trusted, right? Or even things like If you learned how to ride a bike, you had an individual next to you that you trusted to help you with that, to steady the bike for you, right? When you learn to drive a car, there's individuals that teach you, quote unquote, how to drive the car. You have to trust those individuals to convey to you information that you're not familiar with in that moment, right? This is a very similar process. There are unknown aspects of you that can filter into your reality that you can fold into who and what you are. But you're familiar with that process of letting the unknown become part of your known. You've done it in many different ways. So understand that this isn't so foreign to you, this process of trust. You've done it many times. Just be aware that you have done it many times. This is just a little different way of doing it. But what's nice is that you do have the examples of now many, many people on your planet around you who are doing this. And you can look at those examples. You can see how their lives have changed as a result of their trusting in this process. And this can help you to allow yourself to open your own self up to that process within yourself. And understand, of course, that your process is never going to be exactly the same as somebody else's process because you're a unique individual. It will be unique to you, but it will do all the same things. It will provide you with increased opportunities. It will open many more doors. It will provide you with fresh ways of approaching things. All those things will be part of your existence as well, if that helps.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. My final question is, are there any things you would suggest as fun ways of allowing a more interaction of more aspects of self to come flowing into our days?
So, of course, in that regard, as with all things, there are so many ways for that to occur. What we would suggest is to think back in the last perhaps couple months for each individual. And are there little ideas, little thoughts, little feelings about things that maybe you wanted to do that maybe you've done a little bit in the past, perhaps you haven't, that have surfaced for you a few times? Perhaps it's you think maybe it would be nice to begin cooking, begin creating with food. Or possibly you might think that, well, maybe I want to start learning how to play a particular type of an instrument. Or possibly writing poetry is something that has stimulated itself within you someplace. Or maybe you've had a draw to be able to spend a little bit of time outside, be able to walk in the parks that you have surrounding you, to be able to walk in the woods if you have that. There's many, many, many things out there that can open those doors. Think in terms we would suggest of something that isn't necessarily going to have a goal at the end, but just something that you think might be fun to explore, just because it's something nice to explore, regardless of what it is, whether it's exploring music, whether it's exploring writing, whether it's exploring cooking, whether it's getting outside, maybe it's exploring sewing, maybe it's exploring, it can be anything. It can be exploring computer programs. It doesn't really make any difference. If it's just something that you feel some level of inspiration, even if it's just a little bit, to be able to explore, you'll begin to open doors in that regard. It may even be that that's just the beginning. That was the threshold, and then it leads to a different exploration. You never know. So when you get into this exploration, try not to hold it too closely in the ways that you talked about before about how it should unfold. Allow those ideas to keep coming to you and to act on those ideas, regardless of what those ideas are. And they'll help you in that flow. They'll help you move you in that direction of self-discovery, we would like to say in this moment. So yeah, it can take many, many, many forms. So allow it to take whatever form seems like there's some interest, something you're curious about. It doesn't have to be as strong even as inspiration to start with, but even just a little bit of curiosity might be all it takes.
And follow the impulse.
Absolutely. Follow the impulses. The channel has a list that he made up at one point in time. He terms that theme of that list the eyes of the self, and not these types of eyes, but the letter I. Things like inspiration, impulses, intuition, those types of things, right? Feeling states, little taps on the shoulder, little things that pop in, right? Ideas that come to you that may not be associated with anything that you're doing in that moment. They just show up. right? Those types of things are so nice to explore. They give you doorways to potentials that are out there that otherwise you might walk right past. So yes, those things are very nice to involve in your experience of your existence.
Thank you for your time today
Oh,
and
very
your
much,
wisdom.
very much. So just in tying things up again, we would say that this is, of course, for individuals who are new, it is a process. It is like that process of being in school, where at first you're in an environment that seems a little bit different, a little bit strange, a little bit foreign to you. You're not quite sure if you're safe, quote unquote, in that environment. And then little by little, you find out that you are. And you find that the things that you're offering are things that you're having fun exploring, and other individuals around you are having fun exploring. And if you especially find yourself in an environment where you're allowed to interact with those things in the ways that you find a little more fulfilling, which this experience is completely about, then you'll find the satisfaction, the fulfillment of your experience even more so in that direction. So as you move in this direction, understand that it is a process, but it's not a process that's unlike other processes you've had. And so just move your trust in whatever degree you're able to in that moment in this new process for yourself and begin to explore this process and allow it to open its doors like other processes in your life have. And we think that you'll find that there's an enthusiasm that builds in you that flows from those deeper parts of you that will help to guide you in that process too. So that would be the last little bit that we would leave you with.
Beautiful. Thank you.
And, and so in trusting yourself in the things that we've mentioned and the things that have been expressed today, allow those deeper parts of yourself to be your guide always. In the beginning stages, it can be hard to hear that guidance, to feel that guidance. But as you continue to open those doors, it will become increasingly tangible for you. And so do that. Allow yourself that expression as you move into your experience.